Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Expansive Astrology Academy with Melissa. It's me. Here we are for Libra season, week 3, diving into all things relationships, which is a huge topic, but I'm really excited for what I have for you today. Libra rules the 7th house of relationships. So that's why this is the season when we really zoom into that aspect of our life and do the most work there. So before we really get started, I want you to ask yourself, or I'll ask, you tell me, you answer. Let's take a little inventory. Let's just like zoom out and reflect. What kind of relationships are you drawn to? What kind of relationships do you attract into your life and do you engage in historically and recently, romantic and otherwise? What kind of relationships exist in your life and have existed in your life, you know? Are you often disappointed in your relationships? Are you often frustrated in your relationships? If that's the case, what do you think is going on there? Like take some time. What do you think is going on there? What are you settling for? If that's the case, if you're often disappointed, or if there are some like common factors that you see throughout, if you catch yourself in a pattern, what do you think is going on there? What are you attracting into your life? What are you settling for? Now be really real with yourself about this, but keep it empowering. Okay, this is about objective evaluation that does not include like blaming yourself for your past relationships or your patterns in relationships. This isn't any sort of like common denominator thing. I hear this from clients all the time. And I remember feeling this way, and I think it still kind of it creeps up for me sometimes. When we do this type of like objective evaluation, and when we start to notice patterns that happen in our lives, it comes up a lot. This idea of like, oh, I'm the common denominator here. I'm causing all the problems. Me. A lot of like self-hatred and blame. Don't do that. Keep it in. This is about noticing the patterns, noticing what you are contributing to these situations, but keep it empowering. Okay, and don't dismiss other people. Like so there's room to take responsibility for what the patterns have looked like for you. And don't dismiss others' influence over your history of relationships and the patterns that you've seen, right? This isn't about blaming. It's not about blaming yourself. It's not about blaming your exes. It's not about blaming. It's about evaluating and accepting and truly acknowledging what's been going on, what's been happening, what's the story of your relationships. This is about embracing the power that we have over situations and how we respond to them. Take inventory of how relationships tend to go for you. Take some time with this and like be kind with yourself, be gentle with yourself as you do so. This Libra season invites, the invitation is in exploring how we feel comfortable with others and how we make others feel comfortable with us. Then we're expanding upon that, growing beyond that, dilating and opening to more, becoming willing to both receive and create more and better in our relationships. So let's talk interpersonal effectiveness. Interpersonal effectiveness. I was first introduced to this term teaching DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, and interpersonal effectiveness was like my favorite section of DBT. I love it. It's so important, and it's even in the name, like being effective in our interpersonal interactions, interpersonally effective with others and with ourselves, right? So there are 3 keys to this thing called interpersonal effectiveness, and they are self-respect, honoring others, and advocating for ourselves. So let's break it down. There's first the need for self-respect, which is how do we create self-respect? I want you to consider for yourself, where is your level of self-respect, and how do you foster it? What makes you feel the most sense of self-respect? Self-respect is created by engaging in actions that are rooted in our priorities and our goals and our values. That's how we best respect ourselves and have the easiest time respecting ourselves, is when our actions and our behaviors are in line with what our goals and priorities and values are. And this isn't always easy. It's not always easy to prioritize. It's not always easy to find and to foster. How do you create self-respect? What do you have trouble respecting about yourself? Again, be gentle with yourself. This is just, keep it kind of matter of fact. Like, oh, I don't really like it when I do this. It's kind of hard to respect that about me. Stay empowered as I ask these sorts of questions. When is it the worst and when is it the easiest? When is it the hardest to respect yourself and when is it the easiest? I think we all have a pretty good idea, right? What builds your self-respect? Remember your values. And I talk a lot about values in Cancer season. You can go back and revisit that if you don't have a very solid idea of what your values are and what values you're trying to operate off of this year or this month or this week, right? Our values can change. Prioritize self-respect, because it's the first key to interpersonal effectiveness. It's the first key to having healthy and effective relationships. Second, we have, we're balancing with our self-respect. We're adding in treating others with respect and care and honor and interest and validation. Now this too isn't always easy. The second pillar of interpersonal effectiveness, honoring others, is not always easy. For sure. We may feel like our respect is to be deserved, or we may wonder why we should bother extending these energies, honoring and respecting and validating just anyone. Right? And so why should you? Why should you treat others with respect if it's not necessarily been earned or if it doesn't feel returned? Here's why. And it's pretty simple. We treat others with respect even if it feels unearned for a simple reason. It helps us build our self-respect. Let me know what you think about that. That's not always easy for everyone. And I'm not talking about being a people pleaser, which we'll get into a lot more later. I'm not talking about being a doormat and just letting anybody treat you however you want. And you're a little, oh, but I respect you, I love you, I honor you, no matter what. That's not what I'm asking for here. And we treat others with a pretty basic level of respect because it helps build our self-respect. It helps build our self-esteem. That third key is advocating for ourselves. So at the same time that we're balancing respect for ourselves with respect for others, we're also making sure to prioritize advocating for ourselves. We're making sure that we're getting our own needs and wants met in healthy and empowered ways. There's the key. Right? A lot of us are really good at making sure our needs and wants are getting met, but it's not always in the most healthy or empowered of ways. So we do this by setting clear boundaries, saying no when we need to, and asking for what we want. I like to call this teaching others how to treat you. If you start to look, you will notice so many opportunities to teach others how to treat you. And you can be very, very direct about this. Ask for what you want. There's a lot, I talk to people all the time who really resist doing this. There's this idea of, well, they should know. Especially the people closest to us. We have this feeling or this entitlement, frankly. We feel like others should just know what it is we want. And sometimes, yeah, that'd be nice. Maybe that can be true sometimes. Maybe your husband should know that you want a hug when he walks in the door. Maybe your husband should know to give you a call. Maybe your mother should know not to, I don't know, right? There are a million examples. Maybe you're, I hear it from mothers all the time. Like, what is like the biggest piece of advice we give to new moms? I'm currently pregnant, and this is probably the biggest piece of advice I've gotten from anybody. It's ask for help. And there's this resistance to doing that. It's like, well, people should know. People should know that I need help. And it's hard to ask for help when people should know. And if they wanted to help, they would offer, right? Just take that out of the narrative. It's so much easier to just take that expectation out of your head, out of the narrative, and practice asking for what you want. That can be really hard. And it's about advocating for yourself. Be your own best, biggest advocate. In my mind, I have this version of myself that I employ when I am having a hard time advocating for myself. And she wears a low bun and like thin rectangular dark framed glasses and like a pencil skirt. And when I need my inner advocate to come out, she steps forward, and she's very business professional and effective and firm and fierce, and she'll ask for what I need. Right? I like to kind of picture that version of me who is my inner advocate, who will ask for what I want. Whether that's tacos for dinner, or a hug from my partner when he gets home from work, or whatever boundary or need or desire I have. Learn how to find opportunities to teach people how to treat you, and don't be afraid to do so. You don't have to be a jerk about it. You don't have to be forceful about it. And there are a million opportunities to teach people how to treat you. Take advantage of that. Flex that muscle. Employ your inner advocate more. They want to do that work for you, and you deserve it. So those are the 3 pillars to interpersonal effectiveness, just to review. Self-respect, respect for others, and advocating for yourself. And advocating for yourself includes setting boundaries, saying no when you need to, and asking for what you want. Okay? This is the work of the season. Let's talk a bit about conflicts in relationship, how to engage in healthy conflict, how to handle conflict as it arises. Let's talk about conflict. Because Libra is like the master of relationships, empowered Libra does not allow issues to fester. Empowered Libra knows that allowing problems to go unaddressed, allowing problems to fester, disrupts the harmony. And Libra is all about bringing harmony and beauty and strength and comfort to our relationships, right? And that doesn't exist when there's elephants sitting in the room, right? So conflict is required in interpersonal relationships. Sometimes it's required that we engage in healthy conflict and deal with conflict in our relationships. So let me take a pause and we'll hop right in. So let's start with reflection again. Let's reflect. How do you currently cope and deal with conflict or misunderstandings? Where is your comfort with conflict? Do you avoid conflict? Are you quick to engage in conflict? Are you pretty avoidant and people-pleasing? Do you find yourself engaging in conflict a lot? Like, what's going on in your relationships? Are you often finding yourself in conflict in your relationships? Are you always ready for a fight? There's a spectrum here, the spectrum from passive to aggressive. And in the middle of the spectrum is like assertiveness, right? Where do you fall on the spectrum? And that might change depending on which relationship we're talking about. Maybe with your boss, you're much more passive, and maybe with your partner, you're a little more aggressive. And that's normal, that's natural for us to adjust depending on the situation. And I think for the most part, for most of us, the goal should be assertiveness. Yes. Where do you fall on the spectrum? How do you engage in conflict? Do you avoid it at all costs? Are you always looking for conflict? Are you always ready to defend yourself and fight yourself or fight for yourself? What does the current state of conflict look like for you? Just kind of taking stock, again, non-judgmentally, not blaming, just objective observation and evaluation of where you stand now. And then we can start to practice asking yourself these 3 questions when a conflict arises. Okay? 1, what does the other person need right now? Now this might, like, just the way that question is phrased implies that you're going to be mind reading. So you can either directly ask, like, what is it that you're needing right now? What is it that I'm missing? That might help. Or if you're not able to get there and like directly ask, what is it that you're needing right now? Just keep in mind that if you're doing some mind reading, if you're doing some guesswork about this, just keep that in mind, right? Just acknowledge that you're guessing. That's important. The second question is, what do I need right now? What is my need that's arising right now? What do I need to come from this right now? What is my goal here? Sometimes in conflict, especially very passionate conflict, or especially very complicated conflict where there's a whole bunch of history and a whole bunch of pain and discomfort, we can lose that a lot. Like, we'll start bringing up problems from 8 years ago and like really dilute the situation, and like it's easy to move away from what is the matter at hand. What is it that I need right now? What is my goal here? And then third is, how can I meet these needs of the other person and of myself while maintaining or building my own self-respect? Major key alert. I'm DJ Khaled now. Major key alert. How can you balance what their needs are and what your needs are while making sure that you're maintaining your self-respect? That is so fucking important, right? So this means not being that doormat. And it also means not being an asshole. How can you resolve this conflict while making sure that your self-respect remains intact? When these 3 things cannot be balanced, and this requires some give and take, it requires some negotiation sometimes, some compromise sometimes, right? That's to be expected. And when these 3 needs cannot be met in a conflict, that's a big problem, right? It says that we're either compromising our values or asking someone else to compromise theirs, and that's not fair on either end. And I want to at least for me, when I started really applying this, I realized that at the end of the day, the answer to questions 1 and 2, or at least I'll speak for myself, the answer to question 2, what do I need right now? Oftentimes that answer is like something really soft and gentle and kind of pitiful. Like, a lot of the times at the end of the day or at the end of the conflict, what I'm needing is like a hug and acceptance and like gentleness, right? And warmth. That's usually what's coming up for me when I'm in a conflict. Like, if I ask myself, oh my God, what am I needing from this? Usually it's something like that, a hug or warmth or gentleness or understanding. And just reminding myself of that fact just reminding myself of that fact can sometimes really shift how I'm showing up in the conflict, right? If what I need is a hug, if what I need is understanding, then I need to make it more likely that I'm going to get that, you know? Usually that means putting my claws away and making myself a little more huggable. Again, without being too passive and just bending or bending over, like, it's not about giving up, but it's about shifting myself and how I'm showing up in a way that I can respect and that will get my needs met, and that will also get the other person's needs met to the best of my ability. So I really love that little process. Now, disempower, we're gonna talk about people pleasing. So if you're one of those passive people, let's chat. Are you passive? Are you a people pleaser? It used to break my heart when clients would call themselves a doormat. I'm like, no, it's such a terrible visual. Like, no, you're not. Or you don't have to be, right? And that visual of the doormat just being trampled on and mud rubbed off on, and also oftentimes the doormat is outside, right? And that's ouch. So are you a people pleaser? I'm talking to you. Disempowered Libra can be that way. Disempowered Libra is so interested in maintaining the comfort and maintaining the relationships that they can be very other focused, other directed. So here are some signs of people pleasers: not engaging in conflict, not wanting to say no, hiding resentment or hiding issues that are coming up, feeling like a burden, excessive apologizing, having difficulty directly asking for what you want. Again, if you want a hug, ask for a hug. If you want something that feels like it's common courtesy and they should just know, well, ask for it. Difficulty setting boundaries in general is a sign of people pleasing. And speaking of boundaries, it's important that we put our own self-respect, prioritize that above being liked by others. So many of us rely on our relationships with others to feel a sense of wholeness or worthiness. And let's start to shift that a little bit. Place your own sense of self-respect above being liked by others, because that's more important. And it'll get you further at the end of the day. Like, if you respect yourself, that will do more for you than being liked by others at the end of the day, I promise. Also, avoid negotiating boundaries in relationships that don't mean a whole lot to you, or unimportant relationships, or new relationships, or just to be liked. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Again, prioritize what you need and prioritize your sense of self-respect above being liked by others. So know when it's worth it to negotiate your boundaries. Now, on the other hand, there's passivity, there's people pleasing, and on the other hand, there's like self-centeredness, or there's conceit, narcissism, right? Make sure you're in an empowered place on that spectrum. Empowered Libra, again, is not willing to allow problems to fester. Write this down. Like, take note. People pleasing, as necessary as it may feel, people pleasing does not result in comfortable and healthy relationships. Know that. It might get you through for a while. It might feel necessary, and people pleasing will not ever, it won't result in comfortable and healthy relationships. The magic is in making peace with people without jeopardizing our own needs and self-respect, right? This means taking charge of our happiness and taking charge of our relationships and the relationships we engage in by not being afraid to teach people how to treat you. I'm so serious about this. Again, not in a condescending way, but by being kind and direct, asking people for what you need and being willing to adjust. Don't be a jerk about it. So what does healthy conflict look like? How do we manage conflict in a really healthy, empowered way? What would Libra be proud of? I have some bullet points. healthy, empowered relationships, healthy conflict management looks like a baseline of both self-respect and other respect, which requires a willingness to advocate for yourself. Make sure that your priorities are straight. If your goal is to win the fight or to be right about what's happening, rather than a goal of like seeking understanding and resolution, take some time, take a break from the situation. Okay. Having a goal of being right or winning a fight is not, it's not empowered. It's not. Having a goal of resolving the fight and finding common ground again, that is empowered, no matter what that looks like. Sometimes admitting that we're wrong is empowered, and our brains go, run, no, like, because our brains want to have the power, and admitting that we're wrong doesn't feel powerful, right? There's like this interesting relationship between being powerful or feeling powerful and being empowered. Just know the difference there. Pick your conflicts wisely and only consider the relevant issues. Again, don't be negotiating boundaries with or engaging in conflicts with people who are new to you or who haven't, I don't know, or just for the sake of keeping that person around, right? There's more important things to consider. Don't engage in these sorts of things just to be right. Don't engage in these sorts of things just to be liked. Pick your conflicts wisely and only consider the relevant issues. Don't bring up the dishes from 8 years ago, because even if it feels relevant and even if it's another example of how they're a jerk and they don't think of you, whatever it is, right? Even if it feels relevant, really, really be wise in your discretion with that. For the 80th time, maintain your self-respect. Don't lower yourself to another person's level or try to give them a taste of their own medicine or anything like that. It doesn't work. It's not a key to maintaining your self-respect, right? We do this in all sorts of ways. All sorts of ways. We like lower ourselves to another person's level, or we lower our standards, or we lower how we're showing up. We lower our vibes, if you will. This can look like, well, if he's not going to come to me, I don't want to go to him, right? Or I always have to be the nice guy. I'm tired of having to be the bigger person. I hear that a lot. And word, sister, like I get that. Like it can be really fucking tiring to always be the bigger person. Sometimes we want to throw a fit. Sometimes we want to sit in a conflict and make the other person suffer and make the other person come to us. Sometimes we want the other person to grovel for us for once, right? And that's not embracing power at all. That's sitting and waiting and being pissed. You do always have to be the nice guy. You do always have to be the bigger person. I don't know. I think so, at least. Lowering yourself, your vibes, lowering the way you're choosing to show up happens in all kinds of ways. And why do we do that? Like, what is actually, like, what do we get from that? Why do we do that? Is this some sort of like pride thing? Probably. It's not helpful. It's not helpful. We want to engage in helpful conflict, right? Be clear about your wants and needs. Say no, set boundaries, don't tiptoe around shit. Do this without judging or labeling or name calling. Learn how to be direct and clear about what your needs and wants and boundaries are. Remember that not all conflicts have an immediate solution. That's kind of the work of LIBRA in general, is like finding comfort in the discomfort, finding balance in the imbalance, finding beauty even in those moments. Not all conflicts are going to have an immediate resolution, and that doesn't mean that we have to go into panic mode. We get to increase our tolerance for conflict. We get to increase our tolerance for discomfort. Now, finally, stay away from all or nothing thinking. Stay away from black and white thinking. And we're going to talk so much more about this next week. That's the whole topic next week, is finding the gray, embracing the gray, being willing to embrace grayness in our lives. So stay tuned for all things grayness next week. So that's healthy conflict. With healthy conflict, every single argument that comes up, every single fight that comes up, in the end, should feel effective. In the end, if you're engaging with this, and if you're in relationships that also engage with this, right? Any sort of conflict that arises is just, it's kind of seen as necessary in order to get to the other side, in order to get to the more empowered side, in order to get back on the same page and feel stronger in the relationship, right? Like, conflict isn't something to be avoided. Libra doesn't avoid conflict. Libra knows when to engage in conflict. We can't have comfortable relationships without it. And conflict isn't comfortable. It sucks and it's scary a lot of the time. And it can be useful. Find the usefulness in conflict, and know when to set a hard boundary. Know when to let relationships end. So that's a great transition into like feelings of dependence. Let's talk about feeling whole outside of relationships. This is one of the risks with Libra. Because Libra is so great at fostering relationships and creating beautiful relationships and bringing people together, Libra can have a really hard time when that's not met. Libra can have a really hard time feeling whole and complete outside of that. So let's talk a little bit about dependence. So here's another keyword or another key idea. Like, here's another, like, write this one down. By relying on others and by relying on the state of our relationships for our sense of self-esteem and self-respect, we're giving away our power. By relying on others for our sense of self-esteem, we're giving away our power. We don't want to be reliant on anything outside of us for something so important and crucial like self-esteem. We don't want to be dependent on other people's perceptions, because we all know that perceptions aren't fact and they're changeable, and they depend on a million different things, right? And they're unique to each person. So as much as possible, we don't want to be dependent on anything that's outside of our control. So the sense of dependence can really manifest in not feeling whole as an individual. You are whole no matter what's going on or not going on in your life and outside of you. You are whole and deserving of respect and self-esteem and a sense of worthiness, no matter what's going on outside of you. It's okay for your relationships to be conditional. It's okay for you to feel whole outside of your relationships. It's okay for your love to be conditional. And that's, in my experience, that has been kind of a taboo thing. People don't really like that idea of their love being conditional. And if you ask me, there should be conditions around the love that you give. There should be conditions about around the relationships that you engage with, shouldn't there? You can have an unconditionally positive regard for others. You can always be willing to extend courtesy and kindness and feelings of warmth and understanding to others. And for others to engage in a relationship with you, there should be some conditions around that, right? Like whatever you need them to look like. But, you know, some pretty common things would be, don't lie to me. Show me respect. It depends on you. It depends on every person and what you're really, for some relationships that looks like don't flirt with or talk to or engage in relationships with the people outside of this relationship, like monogamous relationships, right? That's a condition of the relationship, is that the person, that both parties are loyal to that relationship. That's a condition, and that is allowed. In my opinion, you should be allowed to place conditions on your love. And that's one way that you can help make sure or remember that you are a whole individual person, no matter what is going on outside of you. It's really common to feel let down when efforts aren't returned, or when the way that we extend love doesn't seem to come back to us. It's natural to feel let down by that. And so let me remind you that you're allowed to directly ask for what you want. And your perfect companion only exists in your mirror. It's kind of unfair to expect that all the ways that you love and all the ways that you nurture are going to be directly returned to you and mirrored back to you. That might not be a fair expectation. There needs to be some level of understanding or respect that everybody loves a little differently and everyone shows up a little differently. So that's where we get to go all the way back to the beginning of this topic, in the beginning of this video. Are you balancing your needs and their needs and self-advocacy? Are those three things in balance? Are those three things getting met on a regular basis? Can you adjust your expectations while still maintaining a sense of self-respect and not giving up on the conditions that exist in your life and in your mind for loving you? There's a lot that can be unpacked there, and a lot of work that can be done there if this is something that you suffer from, feeling let down when efforts are not returned. And like, the first piece of advice that I would give for that is to not be afraid to ask for what you want. I saw a friend who is a Libra sent me, I think it was like a meme or a post on Instagram, and it spoke all about how Libras hate their birthday. They have a hard time with their birthday because it's always a disappointment. And I know that this comes up for people who are not Libras too. This was just the anecdote that she sent this to me recently. And this was saying, and it makes sense, Libra is so good at providing for others. That Venus influence helps. Libra might be so good at creating and celebrating the best birthday for their best friend possible. And then their birthday rolls around and efforts aren't returned, or at least not in the same way. And that can be a big fucking bummer. And that can really suck. And again, this happens for more than just Libras. I know I've had birthdays where I'm like, well, this blows. Where is everyone? What the fuck? This sucks, and it's painful, and it hurts, right? And it's just important to really be careful about that and evaluate that and notice when that's coming up and kind of check your expectations. First of all, have I tried to create for myself what I'm seeking? Have I done any of the work of inviting people for my own birthday, and we might feel really reluctant to do that. We might feel like that's not fair to us. And maybe it's not, but life isn't fair. And if you want to have a big get together at hibachi for your birthday, maybe you need to make that happen for yourself, right? Don't be afraid to make that happen for yourself. There are times I'm laying in bed with my partner and I'll say, I'll actually put his hand where I want it on my head, and then I'll start playing with my hair. And a former version of myself wouldn't let myself do that, right? Like I've had to do some work to get there, and do some work around feeling comfortable asking for what I need, and not feeling like I'm like somehow missing something, or like my partner is somehow missing something, or like my partnership is somehow missing something because I have to do that. I hope that makes sense. Again, your perfect companion only exists in your mirror. So you can actualize that in your real life by showing up for yourself and by asking others how to show up for you. This doesn't mean, like, sometimes we simply are let down by how people are or are not showing up for us in our relationships. It's important to validate that when that comes up, right? Like, this doesn't mean that if you're feeling disappointed by something that's wrong and that you need to just do the work about it. Sometimes that might be true. Sometimes you just need to validate that and actually look at that and accept that, and be like, whoa, like, this person is consistently letting me down. This person is consistently not showing up for me, not meeting my efforts, not matching. And I'm consistently feeling disappointed in this relationship. Like, that's something that's really important to actually do some work around. Don't just feel disempowered by that. Don't just feel bummed by that. Like, it's important to address it and do something about it, whether that means shifting how you're showing up and asking for what you need, or creating these things for yourself, or maybe that means disengaging from that relationship a little bit, protecting yourself from that disappointment a little bit more, respecting yourself enough to, even if it displeases the other person, to say, like, hey, this isn't working for me. Like, I'm not getting what I want out of this. I can't keep showing up so fully in this relationship until I'm getting a little bit back. There's a time and a place for that too. So if you're constantly or consistently feeling let down by the efforts that are not returned in relationships, validate that. That's valid, and that's hard, and you deserve better. So how can you get better? Whether that means putting up more space between you and that person, or you showing up a little more fully for yourself. Now, this requires really learning yourself and knowing yourself fully, and embracing so much respect for yourself. We may become dependent when we don't have a full understanding of who we are. This is because we seek validation and we seek our reflection in others. When we don't have a super solid sense of who we are, how we show up, why we're respectable, why we're whole, why we're okay, if we can't create that for ourselves inside of ourselves, we need that. We seek that from outside of ourselves. So know yourself very well. Embrace so much respect for yourself, radical levels of self-respect, to kind of minimize that potential there. This is something to reflect on, maybe do a little journaling on. What are some barriers that exist in your life to intimacy? What are some barriers that you know of, or that you see in your life that prevent you from being very close with others? This can be doubts that come up for you, fears that come up for you, any sort of difficulties that block us from intimacy. What makes you uncomfortable with intimacy? What makes you a little unwilling to engage with intimacy? This is why our narratives and the way that we think about things is so important to manage, making sure that our narratives are in support of positive things. We have to manage any fears and thoughts that fuel feelings of unworthiness and fuel feelings of disconnection. So this can be, you have to really flex your brain's muscle to, I love this affirmation. I'm willing to be pleasantly surprised. I am always willing to be blown away by what's to come in this relationship or in this situation. That helps your brain just look for more of the positive. Our brains so often hang out in negative narratives, or so often look for the negative or the red flags in relationships, which is good, right? We want to see the red flags. We don't want to be oblivious to those things. That's a good thing that our brain does for us. And we want our brain to be in alignment with and in support of positive, happy, healthy relationships. So we kind of have to set ourselves up for that. That this doesn't mean being blind to the red flags, and this doesn't mean like just letting those things go and forgetting about them, but this does mean managing our narratives and making sure that they're in support of positive things happening in our relationships. So let's see, I have an example from somebody I spoke to today. She said she's in a new relationship and it feels healthier and more respectful than any relationship that she's been in. I'm so happy for her. But she's like, I have so much anxiety about it because he feels too nice. Like, I'm so scared that, like, I'm just waiting for it to explode. I'm waiting for myself to get hurt. And we do that. That's a natural thing that her brain is doing for her. And I told her, like, our brains do that. That way, if something were to come up and we were to end up hurt, our brain would be like, see, I knew it. I told you, men are trash. You can't be trusted, whatever. Our brains like to be right about things. So it'll wait. It'll wait until it is right. And it'll find the one thing that feels like discretion and be like, aha, there's the red flag. The other shoe dropped. I fucking knew this would happen. Our brain loves those moments. So annoying. Can you do the same for the opposite? Can you be looking out for the positive? Set yourself up to receive more of the positive. That's very Empress energy. This receiving piece. We have to manage our fuels and our thoughts because they can really add fuel to the fire of our feelings of unworthiness. Make sure you're engaging with thoughts in your brain that fuel the fire of self-respect and happy, positive relationships. And don't be afraid to use mantras in your relationships. My partner and I say to each other frequently, like, I can't believe our relationship is getting better and better every day. I can't believe we're getting closer and closer every day. And that's an affirmation that we share between us. It's a mantra that we share between us, and it comes true. And it ain't always easy, and we definitely engage in conflict. Definitely, for sure, on a weekly basis. There's some sort of conflict, right? And that is still true for us, that our relationship is getting better and better and better every single day. Remember, Libra is all about balance. This includes a delicate balance of self versus other. There's a lot of the beauty lies in holding and appreciating without grasping too desperately. And when we're dependent on relationships outside of us, when we're very other focused, when we're unable or unwilling to feel whole on our own, that's when we start to grasp and out of desperation. So practice like loosening your hold on these things, and just holding appreciation for your relationships. So the affirmation for this week is, well, I think I have like a few suggestions. So take one or all of these and kind of adjust them how you need to. I promote harmony in my relationships. Pretty simple. And it's a good thing to kind of return to and reflect on as you're moving throughout your relationships. I promote harmony in my relationships. This can kind of help keep you in check. I am worthy of healthy relationships. That kind of goes along with the, I'm always open to being pleasantly surprised. I am worthy of healthy relationships. The person that I was just speaking about, who is in a healthy relationship for like pretty much the first time in her whole entire life, is having a hard time with feeling deserving of the kindness that she's being shown. So she has to really remind herself, I am worthy of healthy relationships. Another good affirmation or mantra that might kind of just offer some support or some comfort to you is, conflict helps to foster growth. And that's really important to remember. Conflict helps to foster growth. Don't be too afraid to engage in conflict when necessary, because it's not always bad. It doesn't always have to be a bad thing. It can be a really helpful, healthy thing to engage in conflict sometimes. So that's what I have for you on relationships this week. I would love for you to drop a comment and let me know like what is resonating for you most, what stands out to you the most. Where do you think personally you have to do the most work in this area of life? I'm also curious, I love this topic. I love interpersonal effectiveness. I'm also curious if anything comes up for you that you would maybe like another video on, or if there are any topics when it comes to relationships or conflicts or interpersonal effectiveness. Is there anything that it feels like I missed? I'd love to hear from you and maybe do a follow-up someday outside of Libra season, completely separate of expansive astrology. Feel free to let me know. I hope that this resonates for you. I hope that moving forward, you feel a little more empowered and more confident in engaging in conflict and in handling your relationships, and especially in building your own sense of self-esteem and self-worth. My heart is with you. Good luck. Good luck. Take really, really good care of yourselves, and I will see you next week. If you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe. Leave a comment, leave a like. It really, really helps. I'm wanting to grow this thing and get this out to more and more and more people. So I really appreciate your support so much. Like I can't even say how much I appreciate your support. All right. I'll see you next time. Bye.